probably start because I think a couple of people might show up. But if you are in chat, say hi. This is going to be a complete speedrun of Marathon Eternal 1.3 beta, using what I refer to as the any percent route, which basically means that any optional levels get skipped, but it does mean that there are still 37 levels in the route. The replay is I played most of it last night. A couple levels I think were for the night before. The whole thing took 2 hours and 31 minutes. Okay, it actually, I think I meant to click replay previous film, or replay save film, but it looks like this is the same run. Alright, that's good. Anyway, I'm gonna wait a moment before I actually start replaying it for real. Yeah, if you're there, say hi. I doubt anyone is here yet, because I just announced it. So for those not familiar, Eternal is one of the biggest marathon scenarios. I am one of the lead developers of it. This is a beta version of 1.3, which is not publicly available yet. I speedrun it because I am something of a masochist, but I just kind of started speedrunning it and then decided that I'm going to continue because, I don't know, it's a good way to hone my skill at the game and also to test for things that could be annoyances to players, which I have found a few of them. Haven't changed much of it with the mind of with the goal of speed per se. In fact, there's almost nothing significant that has been changed because of speed, just because of minor annoyances. Anyway, I guess I'll go ahead and start playing the actual game now. So this is a speedrun of Eternal. The first couple things you'll notice probably are that the field of view is different in this level, and the texture color is different. I'm not going to get into specifics of how we do the field of view, but in this version of Eternal, you can customize it. In previous versions, it was hard-coded into the maps. We're using a different method now that allows players to put their own values if they want. Dream levels, such as this one, will have a different value than non-dreams. The other thing is that Marcus's interminable journal entry that starts off the game in the original version has been split up into 3. Each of these 3 terminals activates something that helps you progress to the next part of the level. And this introduces a non-vanilla mechanic that Eternal uses several other times. And by showing it in the first level, we're basically showing players that this exists and that you should expect to see it later on. The fourth thing that people might notice is that the sounds are different. I remastered literally every sound in the game. And we also introduced a number of other new sounds to signify which time period, to some extent, to signify which time period a level is taking place in. So this is taking place in the future, so we're using some remastered Marathon Rubicon sounds, which Chris and Scott graciously gave me permission to reuse Rubicon assets a few years ago. And then you will see in the next level, which is taking place during the same time as Marathon 1, there are a lot of remastered Marathon 1 sounds. We're done with this level. It's quick, you're just picking up all your ammo. There isn't really much to say about it other than, you know, I try to do it quickly, because if I don't, then I get, then it's just kind of a pointlessly slow start to a speedrun. You will notice the teleport sound in was different. Teleport in sound was different, because we are now on Marathon. This game, and if for those who are not familiar with the plot, is quite time travel intensive. For this level, this is kind of introducing the mechanic that the rest of Eternal uses. You pick up most of your ammo from enemies in this game, which means that on this level in particular, you need to be a bit careful about your staff charge count. After this level, it doesn't matter. You will never run out, but on this level, there is a risk of that. So I do stop a little bit to pick up some charges that I probably wouldn't really bother with on later levels. There's this level is easy, but when you're speedrunning it, there is a risk of of dying because you probably play a lot more recklessly than you normally would. I did not mean to hit that bob, by the way. That was a complete accident. There are a couple of bobs later that I probably do kill intentionally. Just because they get in the way. In this level, it's a fairly straightforward mission, really. I mean, it's a typical first marathon level with combat. It's mostly fighters, a few enforcers. The enforcers are definitely, I would say, the biggest threat on the level, just because they have a near hit scan weapon that has a very high firing error. So you got to be a little careful about them. As you will see here, I kind of just move forward a little bit so the enforcer sees me but is not able to shoot at me, basically. Because otherwise the enforcer just stays there and you kind of have to deal from a disadvantageous position. We're just about to hit the switch that is basically the entire mission of this level. That's it. After I do that, I hit these two enforcers because I want their ammo. And then we just have to get to the end. I try to do this without having to recharge again. It's optimal if you don't have to recharge at all, but other than the first 2x. But that requires some pretty good luck with enemies. That particular moment there, that particular platform, I mean, that I activated with that switch is actually one of the biggest sticking points for runs for me. It's really easy to get tripped up there, just not be on it when it raises, and that's not good for speed. But we're done with the level, and proceeding on to the next level, Septococcal Pfhoryngitis. This is the first of several levels that is absolutely gigantic, or that are absolutely gigantic, that we barely see in this run. There's really, the mission itself is quite simple, but figuring out how to do it can be quite complicated for a first-time player. So, I'm once again going to get enforcer ammo. This bob got in the way. I kind of panicked here because I was surrounded by these fighters that were gonna probably start attacking me any minute. You just have to go down this sewer here, pick up this chip, and then you'll have to insert it not even a minute later, like 20 seconds later. There is a little bit of danger here. You don't want to start this level in like below 1x shields because you could die, but overall it's not too tricky. Once again, stopping to pick up this enforcer's ammo, put in the chip, and we're teleported out immediately. The next level, Dysmentria, is also completely it is also a gigantic level that we barely see. And once again, I do go slightly out of my way to make a couple areas a bit more comfortable, you could say. I don't really need to go down this hallway here, theoretically, but this is total carnage, and if I don't do that, then these enforcers here will probably do a lot of damage to me, and that is not something I want to have to deal with, because having to go back to the recharger basically is a reset. Like this early in the run, I would just reset. So, I deal with these fighters here in advance, well, some of them, because they actually do quite a bit of damage in this game. They're not completely unthreatening. And here we're going to get a first look at the troopers. Luckily, the scatter rifle takes care of them pretty easily, which is one of the reasons that I like to pick up as much of ammo for it as I can. It is one of the weapons that I rely on fairly heavily for this run. We don't ever get a ton of ammo for it until near the end, until near the end of its usefulness, basically. And that's Dysmentria. This is a new secret. I think it's new for 1.3. You just grenade jump over here. I don't even know if it really counts as a jump when you're in the middle of the air still. And you pick up that, and it gives you a quick recharge and a bunch of ammo for both the scatter rifle and the assault rifle. That is probably the most scatter rifle ammo you ever get in one place anywhere in this game. The other thing is that you'll notice that I rely on the staff quite a bit on this run. The staff is surprisingly effective. I think we might actually, like right now it's more powerful than it is in 1.2, and I think we might roll it back a little bit. but it will definitely not have as much knockback as it does in this version of the game, but the staff projectile does a ridiculous amount of knockback. That was a really weird LF1 glitch that I don't think anyone has an explanation for. It just does that. Hey Matrix, how you doing? So this level is the first of 5 what we could call branch levels. Eternal, as I was saying earlier, is a bit of a non-linear game. There are 5 levels. It's the 4th level of each chapter. Each of these levels will have 2 exits. One of them will take you to what we refer to as the failure branch. You will have 3 levels in the failure branch and then come back to the branch level. So in other words, you would play this level again. So for a 100% route, if we were going to do a 100% speedrun, we would have to do, I think 47 levels one time, and then 52 levels and then the other 5 levels we would have to do twice. So it's basically a 57 level route. And it is probably twice as long as the 80% route. I have not really routed the 100% route because it would take forever. So I'm just at this point focusing on 90%. I may at some point become masochistic enough to try 100%, but I have not thus far had any such urges. So this is, I was a little bit surprised by that hunter who normally does not survive. This is an area that I changed slightly for 1.3 because it was, that platform was on a cycle and you would just get caught up there and have to wait for it to come back down. I didn't like that. I don't think anyone liked that. I got here a rather unfavorable pattern for enemies for a speedrun. If I were playing this casually, and just didn't want to have to deal with a very difficult room, that would be about the most ideal enemy pattern I could get. But in this case, we're just dealing with these troopers basically one at a time, which is very slow, and not what you want for a speedrun. But we're done now with those dudes. We are about to hit the first of 2 sets of wires that we need to destroy for this level. There are 2 different wings to this level. There's a left wing and a right wing, and you can do them in either order. But I typically do the left wing first because you can get this extra fusion battery from this Bob who usually dies. And at this point in the game, fusion ammo is quite valuable. We will, in Chapter 2, you will basically, there's a level called Unlucky for Some, in which you basically get, if you feel like it, unlimited fusion ammo. Because there's a battle between Bobs and Juggernauts that basically results in a whole bunch of Bobs dropping fusion ammo. So you can basically pick up 100 or 200 fusion batteries in about a minute or 2. And in this run, I wound up getting about 100 on that level, which actually wound up being more than I needed. Because I wound up using other weapons more than I thought I was going to, but, you know, not a big deal. It was like 20 seconds more, I think, to do that. And here I almost die in 2 different ways because I wound up taking longer than I thought I was going to and taking more damage than I thought I was going to, but I do manage to get out of here, get rid of this hunter in time. I have just enough oxygen. See, I just got the oxygen beep. That's rarely happens to me. And then I hit myself stupidly with that grenade because I wasn't thinking. But I had just enough health as well. But we're done now. We don't need to worry about it. We can just teleport out. And I don't need to recharge my oxygen because oxygen recharges automatically in this game when you are not underwater or in a vacuum. So that's a nice quality of life feature we added for this. Well, it's been added. It's been a feature of Eternal for as long as I can remember, actually. A note on the I should note, I guess, note about a couple things about this version compared to previous ones. You might have noticed we have some new music. 2 people have contributed the bulk of our new tracks. A person going by the moniker of Talishar, whose music you will hear starting in Chapter 4, and then Corey King Tucker, whose work this piece is, and several others. The soundtrack for the previous level, Sakhmet Rising, was also his work, as were a few others that you've heard. Most of Corey's work is in chapters 1 and 2, but there is some work in other chapters. Most of Talashar's is in Chapter 4, but he does have a couple pieces in other chapters as well. But I don't think we actually hear either of those pieces in the 100% or in the any percent route. So this level, kind of convoluted. I don't think there's really a faster way to do it. I like it. It's pretty atmospheric, but it is time consuming. You have to go back to that terminal. Like, that's the first of the mechanic I was referring to that we've introduced in the prologue. You know, not a ton to say about this section. The other big new thing in this version of the game is that several of the enemies have new designs. These were contributed by an individual named General Radix. They have contributed a bunch of different... There are 2 different Enforcer designs, the Fighter design, the Trooper design, the Hunter design, and then some Bob designs that we have not yet implemented, which is one of the features that remains before 1.3 is feature complete. They really did spectacular work. Like, it helps... It's a different but still consistent aesthetic. Like, it matches with the original games without feeling like a carbon copy. I think that works nicely. One note about the Enforcer design, it might look like they only have 2 eyes. That's not the case. They are wearing masks, or helmets, I should say. They have, it's a vacuum suit that they're wearing, so we refer to them as the Vac Enforcer because, you know, they're vacuum enabled. I think I thought I hit that switch the first time through, but I don't know. So this segment here can be a little bit dicey, and I kind of take it a little carefully, because you can easily take a ton of damage and have to retreat here to a recharger. But if you take it fairly carefully, it's not too bad. You can deal with these troopers kind of one at a time, and that helps a lot. Because there's not a lot of room to maneuver here. I repeatedly get confused and turned around in this section. Even though I've played it probably, I'm not gonna say 100 times yet, but I'm sure dozens. I still sometimes forget which way I have to turn. And in this particular case, I actually wound up going further than I should have gone, and setting off an enemy encounter that cost me about 5 to 10 seconds, probably. You know, not a huge deal, but these things do add up. But by taking this a little bit cautiously, I saved myself a trip to the recharger, so it probably was good overall. Like, it probably was a time save overall to do it this way. You have to destroy these wires, and then there's a set of enemies up here that you have to run through. If I have, like, a lot fewer than 1x shields, then I will almost always go to a recharger. But in this case, this is enough. I was prepared for that rather unsettling pattern of enemies because I had seen it before. This is another one of those enemy groups that it's just completely random, as far as I can tell, as to what enemy pattern you get. Because they see you much earlier in the level and they activate, but they cannot find you. They cannot get to where you are. So they just, where they end up is pretty much dependent on your RNG seed, as far as I can tell. And there's no way to know that or to control for it. And the RNG in this game is quite infamously bad. So, to the point where the Lh'owon documentation for this game contrasts Lh'owon's original random number generator with a good random number generator. That's how bad it is. In this case, I decided to go back for a recharge just in case I needed it. As it turns out, I did not. It's basically the rule of speedrunning. If you go back for a recharge, you don't need it. If you don't go back for a recharge, you need it. You know, it's just how it goes. In this particular case, I take the combat in this level a little bit slow to start with because I don't want these enforcers to die to grenades. I wanted to make sure they had the soft death. Because if they die to grenades, then they don't drop their weapon. And that's bad. We actually finished the mission of this level quite a ways ago. It was in that T-shaped room at the start, there are light switches in 3 rooms. And the light switch in the second room is actually what the mission of the level is. but you can't get to the terminal that takes you to the end of the level until you've destroyed that set of wires I just destroyed. I get kind of lucky here. This Mother of all Hunters just got knocked underneath this segment, this overhang here, and can't move unless I'm on the same polygon, which is a very bizarre quirk of this engine. I don't know why it happens, but it saves a little bit of time. I'd say that happens in about 1 in 10 games. I have considered that maybe we should just raise that segment so the Mother of all Hunters can move. We might do that. I don't know. This is the final actual level of the first chapter. The first chapter is really short. It's probably the shortest in the game, except if you're doing 100%. Then I can imagine Unwired would probably make it not the longest, but it would be a lot longer. It would not be as short as Chapter 5 in that case. This level is one that I could probably do a lot faster if I took a different route. The problem is that route would be absolutely painful to execute on Total Carnage, and I don't know if it can be done consistently. Because there's a segment outdoors that has a... Well, no, I say outdoors. There's this segment outside of... How do I describe it? It's a giant lava segment that has an absolute metric ton of compilers in it. And like, they are really dangerous on Total Carnage, and they respawn on this level. There will be up to 5 compilers at any given time. You can see how powerful the knockback on that staff is, by the way, the staff projectile. We're definitely going to tone that down. I took a lot more damage there than I wanted to, and for a moment I was thinking the run might die, or that it was going to be a time loss. But I think this actually wound up making things faster. I have not actually had this particular enemy set pattern happen before, but they basically aggroed at each other, which was really nice. And I think it ultimately saved me some time, even though I had to go back for that recharge, which thankfully was not very far out of the way. This track is an absolute banger. Was made by Thomas Livingston, who did... I think his pieces are the only original background music that, like, original meaning, like, original compositions. The others are mostly based on Alex Stropian's Marathon 1 stuff, with a couple of tracks also including elements of the Halo Combat Evolved soundtrack. But Tommy's pieces are unique, I think. That said, the title theme to the game is also an original composition by Ike Stefan. I don't know if I got his name right. I mean, I don't know if I pronounced it right. It's best to go back for this 2x here because there's an unpredictable trooper encounter in just a moment. This is another case of what's basically enemy RNG, where these troopers get activated much earlier in the level. There's a particular polygon that when you walk over it, it activates all the monsters in that zone. And these troopers are in that zone. But they can't get to you at that time, so they just wander around, and they inevitably wind up in that lava area, but what part of that lava area is pretty much random. You don't really have any way of knowing where they're going to be. Except, well, you can look at the map, but even then, it's just unpredictable. So this is like a very circuitous route to get to those two switches that we have to hit. And you could grenade jump up there, and it would basically, you could pretty much warp up there, I guess is a better way to say it. You would get knocked into the wall by the, like, into the floor by the strength of the projectiles. The problem is that by doing that, you would be taking a lot of damage in an area with a bunch of enemies that have guided projectiles. And you can pretty much do that safely on Kindergarten, especially because a lot of the compilers don't even have guided projectiles on Kindergarten. But the damage that you would take on Total Carnage, I have not actually tried to get this down consistently, but I don't know if it would be doable. I'll have to practice it, because it would be like a 3-minute time save, maybe. A note about the platform cycles. Eternal has a lot of platform cycles, and I have taken some of them out. There's one on this level that I absolutely detested, because it's this one, not the platform I just dropped down, the one right here. This platform would inevitably trap you. Like, you would get right to the platform, and then it would rise up. I hated that. So these platforms now activate 2 seconds after you jump onto the polygon that they're on, which gives you enough time to jump down the shaft, but also, you know, means you don't have to wait 8 seconds for the platform to come back up if you would have missed the cycle before. We are basically done with the combat on this chapter. We're basically just deactivating an AI core here at this point. Which is why there are so many switches. They're fail safes basically. These drones get in the way, and I'm probably gonna take like half of them out, because they just serve as annoyances. They don't really help you, as you can see. So that's definitely something to fix for 1.3. But we're almost done. I mean, there's not really that much more to talk about at the moment. I guess we could talk about the recoloration of 4 of our 5 different texture sets. This texture set used to be primarily green. As you can see now, it is primarily orange. Eternal uses what you could call a 4-color theory, or theorem, I don't know, where each texture set has 4 major colors, and in this case, 4 of the 5 texture sets also are like the 4 major colors of that texture set are kind of centered around one of those 4 major colors of the whole game. So you have Azure, which is a 210 degree hue. You have green, which is 120 degrees. You have orange, which is 30 degrees, and you have magenta, which is 300 degrees. As a side note, we will see this particular dream level 4 more times, one of which will not be as a dream and will actually be going up it. There is what Aperture Grill is referred to as a hole-in-one that I attempted to get on every single one of these 4 dream levels, and I failed at every single one in this run. It was quite saddening. But we're done with chapter 1. As you notice, the teleport sound changed, because we are signifying that we are traveling in time again. So this 4 texture set, it is the one of 5 texture sets that has not significantly changed in hue. We are also about to see the first of Radix's other Enforcer design. This is what the back Enforcers would look like without their helmets, basically. So I take this opening a little bit cautiously, especially because I've already lost a bit of health. But overall, this level, called Hysterical Bloom, is a lot faster than it was in 1.2 and previous versions of the game, because it is no longer an extermination mission. This level is kind of like a tribute to the Marathon level 4 Phobia, as far as I can tell. 4 Phobia had you destroy 1 4 controller cyborg that was enslaving the Spit in the region. In this case, we're basically destroying 3 controller cyborgs, and the original versions, older versions of this level were also extermination, but in this case, we just have to destroy the cyborgs. And the controller cyborgs, as opposed to the ones that we were just fighting. I know it's a little confusing, but one other note is that if we also kill all the enforcers on this level, then the Spit and the other cyborgs on this level will start to rebel. But we're not going to do that, because this is a speedrun. So we've got this room, which is kind of a little bit scary to deal with, but it's not that bad once you get the strat down. That cyborg is down. There's just 2 more of them to go. This level could be a bit dangerous if you, like, at first. But I feel like I've gotten it down to fairly consistent strategy. There's a couple things that can either happen or not happen, depending upon what you do. But if you follow this route and just keep an eye on your shields, then there aren't too many surprises that can happen, which is good for speedrunning. You want things to be consistent. Like, you always want to have a backup strategy, basically. Because if you don't, then if something gets out of your control, then there's really nothing you can do, and it's kind of rip. In this case, we can kind of get some of these dudes to aggro on each other, and we can cause a chain reaction of explosions, and it will save us a lot of time. This level is probably like one of the biggest time saves in 1.3 over 1.2 because it's no longer an extermination mission. I think it probably would take about 20 minutes to do the whole thing in previous versions. I never really speedrun the 1.2 version of this. But this usually takes about 7 or 8 minutes because it's no longer an extermination. Now, we are already just about to get to the second of the 3 controller cyborgs. I don't know if there's any faster ways to deal with this because you kind of have to navigate through all these Pfhor that can, you know, it's if you try to YOLO it, it would probably be you'd need like absolutely godlike luck and better reflexes than I possess to be able to navigate all the combat without dying. At least on Total Carnage. I mean, on Kindergarten you can probably do it in like a minute and a half. If we get lucky, then we can aggro this trooper just by standing underneath him, and he'll, you know, destroy the hunters for us. For some reason, he never ever sees the controller cyborg. I think the controller cyborg may actually be somewhere where the trooper can't actually see it, but I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the map. But anyway, we've just got one of the 3 cyborgs left. That teleporter helps save us a bit of time. Also saves us from having to deal with one of the enforcers in the previous teleporter room, with the one with the first controller cyborg. Now these 2 cyborgs, they're jerks. I generally don't like using the pellet pack ammo this liberally, but it's worth it against these guys. They will absolutely destroy your shields very quickly if you don't get rid of them. Deal with these troopers. Not a particularly big deal if you use this particular strategy. I'm probably at the point where I can stop even bothering to pick up trooper ammo, but I just kind of do it out of habit a lot of times. I did take a fall into this pit, which I decided to grenade jump out. It's probably I think I might have activated a couple of monsters if I had actually tried to take the normal route out of that goo pit, so I figured better to just go ahead and grenade jump. And I do take care of that trooper now because otherwise I have to wait for him to walk around that corner and it's just kind of time consuming. Here we can just activate those 2 hunters and all of the dudes behind them, and if we just wander around a little bit, they'll usually aggro on each other. You do need to be careful with your shields here, and in the other such room on the other side of the level, because you can just get so focused on the combat that you just kind of lose track of what your shield level is. I have done that before. It has definitely killed runs. But as long as you do that, this level is not very difficult. At least if you know, as long as you take it at an appropriate pace. We are already largely done. This is the 3rd controller cyborg room. Gonna get rid of these enforcers, get rid of the enforcer on the other side, who already killed his comrade, or her comrade. I don't really know what the gender of the Pfhor is supposed to be most of the time. In fact, I don't think that. Well, I've gone on a tangent about this before, and it's not super relevant here. There's a number of ways you can deal with these hunters. I, in this case, chose to knock them off of the ledge or attempt to do so, and I think I did succeed with one of them. Just quick death to that cyborg, and we're done with the mission. So a fairly long level, but much shorter than it used to be. The next level is going to reunite us with an old friend. It will also be the first level to feature precipitation, which is a new feature for 1.3. We had wanted to include it in 1.2, but it did not work due to the like it would lag older computers really badly, and there was no real good way to make it optional, so we did not include it in 1.2. So here it is in 1.3, in which it uses a new data type for LF1 1.4 called Ephemera, which, number one, can be disabled entirely. You can also customize how much of it appears to a certain extent. So you're seeing there is Purple Rain, which, yes, that is a reference to exactly whom you think it is a reference to. So we've got, this level is another one that you kind of want to not YOLO entirely on Total Carnage. There are a couple of things that are absolutely crucial to deal with. Number one is that Juggernaut. If you don't deal with that Juggernaut, you're gonna have a bad time. There is this huge bit of enemies outside. A huge horde of enemies, I guess you would say. And you definitely want to deal with some of them. Mostly because they will impede you from dealing with the Juggernaut if you don't. I do take out this Enforcer because I want her, or his, or their, ammo, which you can collect later. And if I don't do that now, then the Juggernaut will probably kill them. So, I am being slightly... I'm just kind of... I was waiting around a little bit because the four had kind of aggroed on each other, but I think whichever one had aggroed was probably done aggroing, so probably dead. So at this point, I am waiting to see if they will fight each other more, which they're not going to do. So I think I just jumped down in just a moment. I don't remember. This is one of my favorite levels in the game, by the way. I don't entirely know why. I think it's just because of the atmosphere. It's very... It feels very appropriate for a game for a 1990s FPS. And it's just kind of relaxing to play through. It's actually a kind of difficult level, which is why I'm taking it a little bit slowly. This is where Eternal starts to go from being kind of challenging to actually being, you know, a substantial challenge. Like, I think most players who have played more than a couple of FPS games probably would not have too much trouble beating Chapter 1 on Total Carnage, but this is the point where it might pose challenging to some of them. Pose a challenge, I should say. This whole planet, I guess, has what forest, I guess... Well, maybe not the entire planet, but every part of this planet that we see has what forest refers to as a tropical climate, which is not super evident at the moment, I suppose, because, you know, we don't have a lot of alien vegetation, which is something that we are definitely considering adding in a future version of the game. But that's why, like, this whole... Almost every level you see here will have rain. With the exception of the previous level, which is not actually on this planet. And then Unlucky for Some, which the entire level takes place underneath a force field that blocks all of the rain. If you'll notice, the purple areas do not have rain, and it's because that's a force field. And I think, although I don't remember this for certain, that part of the reason the force field appears purple is because there's rain on top of it, but I could be wrong about that. We want to deal with these troopers before we drop down here. And we take a slightly circuitous route to avoid triggering a couple of mothers of all hunters that will otherwise teleport in. By just jumping over that particular hole, we avoid that entire issue. I was not intending to actually fire the scatter rifle here because there are a couple of scatter rifle items that will basically refill our scatter rifle if we have a clip that's not entirely full. But if we have an empty one, then they'll give us another one. So it's better to just go ahead and use your entire clip, because otherwise it'll just get refilled. So we're just about to come up to the part of the level that is the actual mission here. Sorry, Bob. In this case, we're just going to deal with these fighters so that they don't follow us later. As I have said before, the fighters are not completely harmless in this game. Mostly harmless, you might say. In this version of the game, you now have to insert this chip before you can activate these two switches. I don't know if it was intentional before that you could do that you could activate the switches without putting the chip in, but I felt like it was a potential point of confusion for players, because the chip is part of the mission, and also these 4 switches are part of the mission. And if you hit the 4 switches but have not hit the chip, then you might think, wait, what am I doing? Like, I guess you would think, well, why did I get this chip? But I feel like it's just slightly more polite game design to sort of require the chip to be inserted before you can easily access those switches. In any case, we're done. This next level is called Unlucky for Some, which, as I mentioned before, is where we get the fusion ammo that serves us for the next 3 chapters, basically. There are a couple of levels that have fusion ammo in chapters 3 and 4, but we don't visit them. So, as a result, we have 22 fusion batteries right now, and we need more than that, because the fusion cannon is an absolutely indispensable weapon for the next few chapters. This level can be dangerous, and it's long, so we're just going to skip most of it. I'm using this setup here to check what my angle is. I don't want it to be too steep, and I don't want it to be too narrow. If it's too... Like, if I push myself back too far, then I get pinned against this wall. Whereas here I just get brushed lightly against it. And if I get pinned against the wall, then there's a good chance that these 4 up here will just attack me and absolutely decimate me, and that would be rip. So we don't want that. But with that narrow angle, or with that, you know, I think I used 140 degrees as my angle. If you press F10, you can see what your angle is. But I used that, and it's about right. I could probably even go a little bit higher, like 142 degrees, 143 degrees. And that might actually be even more optimal. Anyway, once you warp through that platform, you can get up here, which is the final part of the level, but we're not going to do that quite yet. I hit that switch. By the way, if you were playing 1.2, don't hit that switch twice, because you will make the level impossible to complete. I did not catch that bug in our testing for 1.2. It's fixed now, but in 1.2 it is not. Anyway, you have to hit that switch, and then you should shoot the staff or something about 3 seconds later. You want all those guys underneath to wake up. That's very important if you're playing on Total Carnage. If you don't do that, the end of the level will be absolutely punishing. And then we're just going to jump down here. As I said before, there's an absolute metric ton of fusion ammo here. So we're just going to wander around for about a minute. You need to take care so that you're not too close to the Juggernauts, because when they blow up, they can basically kill you, unless you're at 3x shields. I think I wander around and get about 100 fusion batteries, which winds up being more than I needed. But I think it's about a minute that I spend just wandering around and getting their fusion ammo. Like, it's a potential time save to get a little bit less ammo, but at the same time, like, my philosophy is it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, for the most part. I think because one of the Juggernauts died, I wound up actually getting around 120 by the time I got over. Because I was able to walk through that field that was kind of too dangerous to get to otherwise. Anyway, we're done with our fusion side quest. Got more than enough for the next 2 chapters and change. And we're about to get to this, to the end of this level, which can be a little bit threatening, but it's not quite as dangerous as it looks as long as you remember to do what I said with the shooting this shot at the top of the drop there. I'm gonna go back across the goo cannon here, and then we go get 3x shields, and we jump down. We have an absolute metric ton of enemies firing at us, but if we just circle strafe them, it's pretty safe. Our goal in this level is to destroy these 4 wires. That's it. So, we had this massive circuitous jumping puzzle that I mostly circumvented by warping up there. There is a faster setup, by the way, to just get straight to this building. But the problem is that if we did that, we would have to do it twice, because I would need to go back down to get the bob ammo. And that setup is not as consistent, and it is also faster, which is actually suboptimal, because we have more bobs dead by using the slower setup, which gives us more ammo. So this level is Unpfhorseen. It's the branch level of chapter 2. And we're going to skip a part of it here. We can just do this little grenade jump here. And we skip a really dangerous segment that has an absolute ton of wasps and some other dangerous enemies. I guess wasps aren't really that dangerous if they're just one of them at a time. But they can become absolutely lethal when there are swarms of them, because their projectiles actually knock you back fairly far. Anyway, this part of the level is pretty cool because we get to basically YOLO it. There's an invincibility power-up, which is pretty rare in this game, and you get to just take it and just absolutely destroy a whole bunch of enemies. It's really fun. There's actually another one on the next level, but I think there might actually be the only 2 we see in this entire route. Can't remember if there are any others anywhere else. But anyway, we're basically just gonna go full-on Leroy Jenkins here. You know, in particular, we want this Mother of all Hunters to die as quickly as possible. And since we just picked up so much fusion ammo, we're just gonna go absolutely whole hog with it. These wasps are good to get rid of as quickly as possible. I believe wasps are weak to fusion in our physics, which is a good thing to keep in mind. And we want to deal with these dudes. Basically, we're trying to clear out our path back to the recharger here by the time our invincibility expires, because you want to be able to get back to it in case you need it. Here, there's like 7 or 8 switches that you've got to hit, at least normally. I think there's probably a way to skip a couple of them, but I don't think it's very safe for total carnage, because there's a Mother of all Hunters behind one of the doors that you could just grenade jump over. And Mothers of all Hunters in this game, in case you haven't noticed yet, are pretty lethal. They fire a burst of projectiles very quickly, which, you know, is not something you really want to deal with after you've done a grenade jump. And the other thing is that if you did that grenade jump, you would have to do it no fewer than 3 times. You have to do it because you have to go back and forth just to get all of the uplink chips, and then put them in, and then come back to the exit terminal. So I'm a little bit confused here. I can't remember what switches I've activated, I think. And I also am being a little careful in case this trooper decides to be particularly nasty, but we had pretty good luck with him. In this case, we've got this switch to hit back there, and then there's one more switch here, and then there's more switches later because it's eternal, so there's switches everywhere. But we've got the main gates that we need to get out of the way raised. There's another Mother of all Hunters with some wasps. I believe my intention here is that by destroying the Mother of all Hunters, I will destroy several other enemies nearby, which ended up happening. Not as many as I was hoping, but a decent number. This is the terminal that we will be exiting from. There are, again, 2 branches from this level. For the 100% route, we would go first with Tico, who is by the uplink chips, but in this case we want to go with Lh'owon because Lh'owon takes us out of the level. Or it takes us out of the loop, rather. So you can just ignore those dudes. As you can see, I didn't even take any damage. Sometimes I take a little bit. You gotta be a little careful, because if you get stuck behind one of the enemies, then the Mother of all Hunters could do some decent damage, but... and here I switched to the scatter rifle. Even though wasps are weak to fusion, I think, Scatter Rifle is kind of ideal for dealing with them as well, because it does damage. It has no vertical error, and enemies that fly tend to hover at your height, your eyesight level particularly, which is where you're going to be firing the Scatter Rifle from. But the main reason I don't use the fusion is because there's a switch in that room that we absolutely do not want to hit. If you hit that switch, it's like a 30 or 40 second time loss, because there's a mother of all hunters you'll have to deal with that you can otherwise ignore. So the switch in that room, just as a side note, do not hit it. You want to do the grenade jump instead. Make sure you don't hit it. That's the main reason, really, to switch to the Scatter Rifle there. Anyway, we just have to put these 2 chips in here. Then we load up on shields, and we go exit with Leela. So, I like this level a lot. It's a lot of fun. It's really fun to speedrun. It's just got a lot of high-paced, high tension, fast-paced combat. It's a blast to play, really. This level, My Kingdom for Horse, was one of the laggiest levels in the old versions of the game, and I understand why it was designed that way. Like the wide open spaces really make it feel like it's a spaceport, and we haven't completely gotten rid of that for this version, but it was definitely lagging quite a bit. So we took out some of those pillars. They're basically negative space now, which they were before. They were open at the top. And that makes the level run quite a bit faster. This level also has lighter rain than all of the other levels in this chapter, and that's just because, due to the long view distances, the rain wound up being like there's a lot of rain, and so it winds up having to calculate a lot, which would slow down the level. But by reducing the amount of rain, we kind of fixed that problem. With this invincibility, you basically want to get up here as quickly as possible. You want to... Ideally, this Mother of All Hunters should be dead by the time the invincibility runs out. And I think, yeah, I did just barely succeeded at that. And then we can get rid of these enforcers, I think, are the next biggest threat in this area. No big surprise. This level still does feel like a spaceport, even though we took out a little bit of the negative space. It's kind of remarkable, really. I like it quite a lot. This is one of the few levels that I actually bother grenade jumping just to save some time. Like, as opposed to actually skipping part of the level. Like, I'll just grenade jump backwards just because it's faster than rolking, because there's such wide open areas. I feel like I can definitely route this better for use of the assault rifle. Like, there are definitely places where I could use this technique, but I do not use it. But it definitely saves time here, even though I occasionally overshoot my intended destination. Oh yeah, definitely overshot there, but, you know, whatever. So, this level is fairly long. I don't know if there are really any time saves beyond the ones that I've already implemented. It is one of those cases where I think it has probably more switches than it needs, and I'll probably take a couple of them out. But overall, it's a fun level. I like how it's designed. There is an enforcer up these stairs that can ruin our day. And I think I take a moment to actually deal with them, because it's better to just get that out of the way, and they can... that way you don't have to deal with them later as well. Because you will have to go up that staircase, and it's better to just activate them and not have to deal with them. And you can also, like, if you activate the sets of monsters at the same time, you can just kind of deal with them all at once, which is a good aspect of for speed, I think. Ideally, you don't want to need to recharge too often on this level, because it is a long trip back to the recharger for most of it. I have considered possibly putting another recharger in, because I think casual players would like it. I've not decided yet whether I'm going to do that. That's one of those switches that may or may not be necessary. There's another Enforcer up here. Easy to deal with. Do a quick grenade jump so we don't have to go the long way around. Pretty straightforward stuff. And then there's another room through here. I think I might actually go back for... Do I go back for a recharge? I think I just decided, okay, yeah, I should have not gone to the right side. I should go to the... Yeah. So here we go, and I'm deal with these hunters. Eternal has a lot of platforms that are just on cycles that are kind of, you know, constant. I have taken some of them out kind of with each successive release, I feel like. I do like leaving some of them in. Like, they can be annoying at times, but especially if you're, you know, going for speed. But at the same time, having them there does provide the player a moment to just relax and cool off, to kind of reflect on how the gameplay is going or whatever. Or just not have to, you know, worry about combat for a couple of seconds. I think that's kind of important in an action game, especially a game that is as large and long as Eternal is. So we're definitely not going to get rid of all of the platforms on cycles. But we have definitely removed some with each release, and we've sped up some with each release, and as you can see, I missed that one, which was a little irritating, but you know, I don't think we'll ever get rid of all of them, because I do think it is important to have some downtime in a game, especially when there's a lot of fast-paced combat in it. And Eternal definitely has its share of that. It is not as combat-intensive as, say, Phoenix, but it certainly has plenty of intense levels. So it's quite relaxing at times, too. I think it's a good balance. I should note that I am being extremely cautious with the Enforcer's flame ammo, even though I basically never use it in a speedrun. This set of 3 switches can also be moved down to 1. Like, there's no reason that needs to be 3 switches. Other than that somebody was too lazy to use a tag switch, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I probably would use the flame cannon a lot more, if not for this annoying bug that exists in the engine. There is a weapon type called dual function, and I think it's specifically just dual function weapons, but if the 2 trigger types share an ammo type, then if you reload the weapon while you are firing both of those triggers, it will automatically switch you to another weapon, and it's really, really annoying. And because of that, it makes the napalm cannon becomes almost unusable, really. Like, it would be a good weapon. It wouldn't be like something you would use all that often in a speedrun, but it would be a very good sniper weapon, and it would be good for some kinds of close quarters where you just want a wide spread of projectiles that do a lot of damage. But it doesn't really work. And because of that, I use it a lot less than I otherwise would. The same thing applies to a lesser extent to the staff. I probably would use it even more than I currently do in speedruns. I was hoping to grenade jump up there and just, you know, didn't have enough grenades. I probably would use it more often than I do even more often than I do in speedruns if it did not switch me off the primary trigger, or off the weapon when I use both triggers at once. Because both triggers at once will one-hit kill most enemies in the game. Not, I mean, you know, not Juggernauts, not Mothers of All Hunters, but it will one-hit kill Troopers right now. And it will one-hit kill Enforcers. I think it will 2-hit kill Hunters. It'll 1-hit kill Compilers. Like, it's really, really powerful. But, you know, getting switched off of it is super, super annoying. Anyway, this level is called Burning Down the Corporation, and it has a counterpart in the Failure branch called Pissing on the Corporation. These 2 levels actually have the exact same layout. But you only see part of each level in each version, which I think is a really neat concept. Yeah, I mean, well, it's not something that... I don't know if you can fix it in the engine. I think it's an engine bug. I don't know if there's a way to fix it. Like, maybe Lua could fix it. I don't know. I would have to write some test cases and see if I could figure that out. Also, hi Aperture and Dis. I just saw that you guys showed up. I don't know when you did, but I think it was within the last minute or two. Anyway. Like, it's... Like, if there's a way to fix it, then that would definitely be very nice. But... And yeah, I do try to avoid doing it when I'm running out of ammo, but sometimes I hit both triggers at once without thinking. Or I have recently... Like, even if you don't have them both held down when you're reloading, like, if you have hit both of them within the last half second or something, it seems like it still switches you off the weapon. And I don't know why that is. It's just some weird aspect of the code. Anyway, so this level you will see essentially a third of it or so is the same in both versions, and then a third of it is unique to each version. And you will not see the other third in that particular version. So in this case, we can actually skip some of the level too. It still takes about 5 minutes to complete, but there are parts of this level that you do not need to visit, and that in a speedrun you do not want to visit because they can be very dangerous. And I will point out a couple of areas that you should not enter during a speedrun because it is important to note. This Mother of All Hunters, I deal with using the scatter rifle because I do not want to hit this fit. And by using the scatter rifle, which has no vertical error, makes it less likely that this fit will run into my path without me noticing, though it still does happen. Okay, well, welcome both of you. We are already almost done with Chapter 2. This is not the fastest time I've gotten out of Chapter 2. I think I wound up ending this at about 1:02:10 or something. I think I want to say my best time was about 1:00:20 or something. It was about 2 minutes faster. But this is still a pretty respectable time. And I was definitely quite pleased with the way the run was going. So we can just like take this level. We can basically just take the slow-paced rooms and just ignore the fast-paced stuff, which is nice. You can just see right there. That's a one-hit kill with both triggers of the staff. We're ride this platform up. Deal with these enforcers here. The mission for this level is there's 6 sets of wires you have to destroy. That's it. So there's a couple different ways you can go about them. That door, there's a door off behind me right now. That room's pretty dangerous, so it's best to avoid. This can be a little bit dangerous, but not too bad. Normally there are some Pfhor that activate when I enter this area, and for some reason they didn't do that this run. I don't know why. I think it's some weird thing when monsters are not marked as deaf, and they just can be very erratic as to what they actually hear. In this case, because they did not activate, I think I took a little more damage than I was intending to. But the main thing is there's that door right off to the right, or is off to the left now, the big door. Don't go through that door. That's basically a game over if you're on Total Carnage and you haven't explored those parts of the level yet, which in the speedrun you wouldn't have, because otherwise you have to deal with some really painful combat. And ordinarily I would not bother recharging here because there's a 3x. Like you automatically get restored to 3x at the start of the Chapter 3. But in this case, I thought there might be some troopers that could cause me some trouble. It turns out the troopers were dead. This is basically just random. I don't know what's really going on there. But I think like this fit probably got them, is my guess. Anyway, that's it. We're basically done with Chapter 5 at this point. Or Chapter 2, rather, sorry. What did I say, Chapter 5? One other thing I should note before we leave Chapter 2 is that these beautiful new landscapes were done by General Tacticus, who also redid our Lh'owon landscapes. I think he still intends to redo some of the other landscapes as well, but hasn't gotten around to it yet. The thing is, like, the old landscapes for 1.2 are perfectly great. It's really remarkable that he keeps one-upping himself, basically. As I mentioned earlier, I missed every single one of these holes in one. It was really disappointing. And as you can tell, the teleport sound changed again because we moved in time once again. This is... yeah, it might, actually. I need to... I have been trying to figure out a consistent setup for that, but we're going to change that entire level. So I'm not that worried about it, because I'm going to have to find another consistent setup once we've changed it, and that seems like more important to me at this point. Anyway, this is Lh'owon. As you might notice, it's a lot greener than you remember it. I do kind of want to undo the fog a little bit on this level. I feel like it might be a little more powerful with a slightly weaker fog. Some of the Sphit on this level and the next two are hostile to you. It is specifically the ones that are light blue and the ones that are like this orange-red color. And they are also hostile to each other, which is kind of interesting. But, you know, this is a speedrun, so you just want to get rid of them as quickly as possible. One thing to note about is that the Sphit have a weird hitbox. They look like they should be kind of almost circular, but it's really more like they have the same hitbox as the compiler. So, who I guess is a different cylindrical shape, but in this case, like it is not the hitbox you might expect, and people might not be used to firing at the Sphit unless they have played Phoenix. So it is something to be worried about. That door has a slightly shorter delay than it should, so I'm probably going to need to remember to fix that. I would ordinarily just be using Fusion against the Sphit, but the problem is this Flicta are immune to it, sorry. The normal grenade jump here is a little bit dicey because there is a Sphit that will wander in front of you who is not normally hostile, and it's better not to hit him, because if you do hit him, then he will become hostile, and that's a bad time for everyone. You can just knock this dude down into the lava. It won't hurt him. I mean, the damage from the staff will hurt him, but the lava won't hurt him. We're fine. You have to read that terminal. As you've probably noticed, this is a remake of Eat It Vidboy. And then we have the hard stuff rules coming up, and then we'll have 6,000 feet under. This little bit here can be a little bit dangerous. If I had better health, I would just YOLO it and go recharge afterwards. But I was hoping to not have to recharge at all, but as it turns out, I did. I do not want to start the next level with like 1.2 shields. The next level is surprisingly can be quite a bit more dangerous than you would expect. This level has both the Eat It Vidboy and the hard stuff rules in it. The next one is based on 6,000 feet under. So here we're teleporting up to the higher levels of the Citadel. In this case, there's not very much to fight. These Grey Sphit are not hostile. They can get in your way, though. I think I just get... Yeah, I get sick. Sorry, Sphit civilian dude. Yeah, it's a speedrun, dude. These guys can be a bit of a pain, but... so, you know, it's what you would expect, basically. You get up to the top. Well, near the top. There's a terminal that you teleport out from. It's not... These levels are kind of a deliberate breather. And they kind of have to be, because you don't have any enemies that you can fight that you get ammo from. And so because of that, we didn't want it to pose a serious problem to players if they ran out. Now, granted, they should have enough by this point, but just in case they don't, we wanted to be a little bit merciful. But that's not to say these levels are harmless. In fact, I think more of my runs have died on this level than have died on almost any other Chapter 3 level, with the possible exception of Third Rock from Lh'owon. It's hard to say. They're the two most dangerous levels in this run. And like, this level isn't that dangerous casually, but there are a lot of stealthy flying enemies that can come from almost anywhere, and that actually do pack quite a wallop. In particular, the Flappy Boys, you know, they're called ticks in the original games, but they're Flappy Boys now. They can pose... Like, they can strip your shields really quickly. And then there's a whole bunch of hostile Sphit here. And it's kind of unpredictable when they'll get there. but there are quite a few of them, and they can sneak up from behind you when you're at a recharger. So because of that, I take this level a lot more slowly than I would like, because I have not yet found a consistent setup for going fast. And there, in particular, there's a couple of grenade jumps that I would like to be able to do consistently, but I haven't yet figured out a good way to do that. But we've cleared out most of the hostiles fit in this particular area. I'm gonna go back, and I do get 3x or 2x because I'm just, you know, playing it cautious here. Like I said, this level is a really bad run killer. And I do get rid of these Flicta. And then there is a grenade jump that I actually do here, but there's quite a few others that we could do that would save probably even more time. But again, like I said, I have not really figured out consistent setups yet. Sorry again, Sweat Dude. And I took a wrong turn, which I just noticed. It's easy to get turned around in this level too. And then gotta go over here. Hit this switch. Actually, that switch probably doesn't even need to be hit, but this one definitely does. I should test and see. I don't actually know what these switches do, to be honest. I think that second one activates most of the platforms that make it possible to get through without grenade jumping. But I should really figure out the grenade jump setup. That would definitely be like a minute and a half faster at least. I'm really glad we changed this to aliens again from whatever it was before. This track just works so well for this level. And here, this is an area where I sometimes grenade jump across this moat, but there's a Sphit who's not normally hostile to us, but if we hit him, he is. And the problem is he has guided projectiles, and that's just a bad time for everyone. Especially when you're potentially in lava. So, in this case, I took it safe. He does not always activate. If he doesn't activate, I grenade jump. If he activates, I usually play it safe. I guess I could just kill him too, but I'm not that rude. Even though I have killed quite a few other Sphit for getting in my way, so I guess I am that rude. Just wasn't feeling that rude at that particular moment. I don't remember if you actually had to insert that chip to finish the mission in 1.2, but you definitely do now. And now we're going to go up quite a bit away. Quite a bit up. And this next level is going to be at the same height as Bob's big date from Marathon 2. It's called She is the Dark One. And you'll see it has the same kind of ridiculous tides. Unfortunately, we don't really get to play around with those tides much in the speedrun, because they are a lot of fun. But this level is one of my favorites, largely because of the tides, and also because of the large number of flappy boys. This is one of the pieces, by the way, that incorporates some of the Halo soundtrack, as well as, obviously, Chamber from Marathon 1. So for this level, you just mostly got to be careful about the flappy boys and some of this hostile Sphit. There are 2 switches you need to hit, and then there are 2 chips you need to pick up, and then there are 2 insertion points that you need to put them into. And then, much like in the level Dysmentria, you will be... Or not Dysmentria, Septococcal Pfhoryngitis, you will just be teleported out immediately. Without so much as a thank you. And in this case, you will also be put to sleep for 1,000 years, which is fun. Not that anyone ever asked you. So here, this part of the level can be a bit dangerous. Hang on a sec. I'm gonna pause and see. Someone said something that I can't actually see all the way. Okay, yeah. Hey, Tai, how are you doing? Sorry for the delay. Anyway, yeah, this particular area, there's a bunch of Sphit, a bunch of flappy boys, a bunch of Flicta. It can be a bottleneck. I think I have had a run or 2 die here. And as you can see, I'm being attacked by a flappy boy who's doing quite a bit of damage. Um, there is a little Easter egg in the northwest corner of this level, which we do not visit in the speedrun. In the old versions of, like, pre 1.2, there was a view of the Spit Citadel, but we realized that doesn't really make sense, given where this level is supposed to be. How far underground it should be, given that you just walk straight here from 6,000 feet under. So because of that, we changed it, and it is now a view of Bob's Big Date, which actually does kind of make sense. And I think it's just a neat little Easter egg. It's not the whole level, it's just the central area with the that you exit, like, with a view of the structure that you exit the level from. Again, sorry, Spit. You know, they've been getting in my way quite a bit. There is a grenade jump that you could probably do to save some time here. I do not know it. I should learn it. You have to be careful for these Spit that are hostile, and the Flappy Boys, and the Flicta. I think I decided there's going to be a whole line of ticks, and I think I remember just deciding to YOLO it. Yeah. Figure these guys aren't going to catch up with me. So this whole time period we have not seen any Pfhor because we are 1,000 years. We are 1,000 years in Lh'owon's past before the Pfhor actually arrive there. We're going to be kidnapped here, and now we're going to wake up in the middle of the Pfhor invasion. So the pace of the levels picks up quite a bit here, but we're not really going to see this level. And by we're not really going to see it, well, I'll just let you see what happens. We're done. Yeah, the TVCR and I kind of figured that strategy out kind of together in a way. That level can be kind of difficult. That is the third branch point of Eternal. And if you're doing the failure branch levels, it takes quite a bit longer to get there. But since we're just doing the success branches in this route, we can basically skip that entire level. So this is Third Rock from Lh'owon, which is probably the most dangerous level in Chapter 3. It's definitely the hardest, casually. I have had quite a few runs die. The last time I streamed to Twitch, I did 2 attempts of this game that I wanted to be deathless, and both of those runs died on this level, which is kind of an indicator of how things often go. In fact, I died 3 times on this level in 2 runs, but is the second run I decided to just finish the game even if I kept dying a couple more times. Anyway, this time I did not die, since this is a deathless run. I played it a bit more cautiously. I remember saying I need to play this cautiously and then dying like half a second later. Anyway, I actually did play this cautiously this time. I think this level looks really cool with the new Yara set, but I think we were originally planning for 1.3 to change this to this fit set. And we might still do that. I haven't decided yet. It looks really cool either way. So those wires are the first real big objective for this level. And then I think I just forgot whether I had hit the wires. Bear in mind, this has been like an hour into the run by this point, an hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes, I guess. So it's easy to just kind of zone out and forget what you've done. At this point, I am like, there's part of the reason this level is really hard is because there's this constant battle between the Pfhor and the Spit. They will just continue respawning indefinitely, and you can get caught in the middle of it, and it's a bad time. But like if you stay in the periphery, it's usually not that dangerous in most parts of the level. There are a few potential sticking points. I don't really go out of my way anymore to get Pfhor ammo for the most part, except for If there are pellet packs that are roughly on the way, then I will usually get a few of them. In this particular area, there are a whole bunch of troopers that teleport in quickly. But if you strafe them clockwise, sorry. If you strafe them clockwise, they don't really pose that much of a problem. I think I did wind up going a little bit out of my way to get that pellet pack. It's kind of good. Maybe I didn't. I don't remember. Might have been thinking of a different run. Again, the knockback of that staff is definitely going to be reduced quite a bit. The secondary projectile just knocks enemies back to a ridiculous degree. Especially in low gravity levels like this one. I did end up grenade jumping over there. Which is probably gratuitous, and I definitely did not end up needing that pellet pack, but whatever, it was there. I really like this level a lot. Like, it's challenging, but in a good way. It's very fast-paced, got some great combat. The respawning enemies actually is kind of a neat mechanic for the level, because it does kind of mean you don't entirely know where your next threat is going to come from. So it means you have to... Like, it removes some consistency from the level in a way that makes it more about the player having to react on their feet, basically, or their toes. I don't know which expression you would prefer. Because, you know, if you can memorize where the enemies are going to come from each time, then it makes it's essentially just a bit of, you know, well, it's memorization. You just practice the same exact combat every time, and you'll be fine. And I think this makes it more of a test of skill in a way. There are some enemies that you can basically be assured will be there every time, and that's fine. But it's the ones that come in randomly. They add a bit of spice to the level. Anyway, that ship and that platform, that switch that I just activated, are the second major aspect of the level mission. If I remember correctly, I just decided to get a few more pellet packs, and then I head up to finish the level. Yeah. And those were basically on the way, so kind of free. There were a few others that I didn't bother going out of my way to get. And we see the bug with me getting switched off the staff there. But this wasn't particularly threatening combat, so I wasn't too bothered by it. The scatter rifle is really good against, well, number one, against enforcers. And number two, it's very good here because we don't want vertical error when dealing with these troopers. Because if we have vertical error, then we can accidentally hit the Spit, and that's not a good time for anyone. I don't actually know if the Spit would aggro on you if you hit them on this level. They might not. I feel like I've had it go both ways, to the point where I almost wonder if they're Berserker, but they don't act like they're Berserker. So I don't really know what the deal is with them. Also entirely possible that there are two different types of Spit, and that one will aggro on you and the other won't. But if that's the case, they look identical. So I don't really know what's going on with this physics on this level, and I should go look that up. Obviously, I did not do the physics on this level, so... Or at least I did not do that aspect of them. Anyway, that ship is the last little bit of the mission. We can go teleport out now. The last level will also look familiar. It's based on... Of this chapter, I mean. The last level of this chapter will also look familiar. It's based on my own private Thermopylae from Marathon 2. This was the first Eternal level that I worked on, I think. I'm still pretty pleased with how it came out, even though it's you know, it is definitely, you know, it is my own private Thermopylae again, but the atmosphere works really nicely, and even though it has so many troopers, it kind of ends up being a nice breather level. You do have to take it a little carefully at times because going back through this recharger is quite costly, and you don't want to have to do it too many times. Which is also partly why it's a good breather level, I guess, because you get a little bit of time to think. Also, I just really like Nick's remix of Flowers in the Woods or Walk in the Woods and Flowers in Heaven. This is another one of those terminals that you have to read. Make sure you get both of these chips. I have had a run where I did not notice that I did not get one of the chips. They do take a second to spawn in. You do need both of them. Over here, these troopers are not very bright, so we can just cause them to kill themselves, which is quite helpful. And it's probably actually faster than fighting them normally, because there are so many of them. And then there are a second wave of enemies here. There is a second wave? Whatever. Language is stupid. Usually these two enforcers will be the first ones there. And then there will be more troopers. There are multiple ways to deal with them, and I think I wound up kind of fighting some of them and then letting the rest of them kill themselves or something. Just because it wound up working out. That felt more optimal. Yeah, I accidentally knocked myself back into the water. That did not help. I don't know why I didn't recharge sooner, but also the water is just a useful shield against them. And because they kept coming down one at a time, that was kind of annoying. That just happens sometimes. With that fight in huge. Sorry, let me my chat overlay, I should move it a little bit to the right. Let's see, yeah, okay. You were having fun with that last night in huge. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, Huge is a really fun mod. I really like it a lot. I still need to vid that last level, Enter the Douche. I've gotten every other one of the main story levels, but that one has evaded me so far. Of course, I haven't tried it in like a year. Something about this level that I really like is just the mixture of water and sewage. It just works really well for some reason. The note about this level is that it used to be called Flames of Icarus because it used to be the only liquid on the level used to be lava. But we decided that didn't really make sense. And since Lh'owon can do more than one liquid type per level now, we decided why not. But a note is that because it turns out that using one texture from a texture set winds up loading the entire texture set. We wound up using all of the liquids are now native to whatever texture set the level is in, which was not the case in 1.2. And I think that probably caused memory usage issues on some computers. I mean, the game 1.2 has memory usage issues anyway, because we had no idea how much memory those 1024 by 1024 textures were taking up. But in this case, by moving everything to the same texture set on each level, we're reducing the amount of memory required to run them. So hopefully 1.3 will not cause the memory problems that 1.2 caused on Windows. I should note that if you're trying to play 1.2, yeah, I know, like, keyboard, it's really weird that I kind of play with keyboard. But I am just not very good at strafing with the mouse, and I feel like that's super important for a game like Eternal. I was having a little trouble with that chip for some reason. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, about the memory usage. Like, Eternal 1.2, like basically every level it is using more than 2 gigabytes of memory. The problem is that 32-bit Windows applications have a hard memory limit of 2 gigabytes. So because of that, if you are not using the 64-bit build of Lh'owon, you will run out of memory when you try to run Eternal 1.2 with all of the options at maximum. So because of that, we halved the dimensions of our textures, both height and width. So they are now mostly 512 by 512. And because of that, I think we're using about 1 gigabyte of memory per level now, on each level now. In fact, it would probably be even less, but our even less memory, but our weapons are much larger for 1.3. So for 1.3, or for this level rather, you need to remember to hit those switches at the end. I have definitely forgotten that before. There's also a terminal message there from Pfhor once you have deactivated those switches, which is quite important for the story. But I don't read it because it's speedrun. But I will just note that if you're trying to comprehend Eternal's story, especially in version 1.3, you will need to pay close attention to that terminal. It does tie in with some other terminals in Chapter 5 of 1.3 that will kind of help reveal what's going on in the backstory. Anyway, we're done with Chapter 3. We're about to go 10,000 years into Marathon 2's past, to the Journial Rebellion, which was the first slave rebellion in Pfhor history. So right away, you will notice this level looks a lot different than it did in 1.2 because it's using a new texture set. It's now using the YOLO texture set. The idea for Eternal is that each chapter should have a dominant texture set, but before 1.3, that was not the case for this chapter. There were 4 levels that used the Pfhor texture set and 4 that used the YOLO texture set. This chapter is supposed to be dominated by the YOLO texture set, so this level now uses the YOLO texture set. The other big thing is this, you're now using... this is the first of Talashar's remixes that appears in this game. I think we have like 7 of them, maybe 6. One of them is kind of a remix of a remix that I've been working on. It's not finished yet, but that one doesn't appear in this run. It appears on the level second to last of the Mohicans. Somehow I missed that texture. It's quite irritating to me. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I'll have to fix that. This opening went quite well. I inadvertently hit this door switch a couple of times more than I meant to. The combat on this level is generally fairly straightforward. Like, it can be a bit tricky if you're not prepared for it, but it's fairly consistent. There's just a couple things you need to watch out for. And it's mostly easy enemies. You can completely... The Hulks are still, or Journial, depending on which term you prefer, are still hostile to you this level. And they are as well the next 2 levels, but you can just ignore them on this level. Starting with Dreadnought, they will not be hostile to you for the rest of the game unless they berserk. Anyway, there's a secret down here. This works a little bit differently on 1.3 than it did in 1.2. In 1.2, that was 4 goo, which damages you, so players probably would be a lot less likely to look there. But since it doesn't damage players now, an observant player would easily notice it. So now you just have to... You can either grenade jump there, or you can use some tricky footwork to get there without grenade jumping. And so you get this secret invincibility, and then if you grenade jump up, you can also get a secret 3x, which you will, which I will do in a little bit. But I want to get rid of all these dudes first. Sometimes these enforcers are nice and just hit 2 of the switches that I need to hit without me having to do anything. But in this case, they only got 1 of them. They were trolling. So I end up having the grenade jump up there, I think, because I didn't want to have to deal with the Hulks and enforcers that were still up there. I really like this level. The atmosphere is really nice. I think the retexturing, so the Yarrow set worked nicely. The new pieces by Talishar work really, really well for this chapter. The other thing I've been doing with this level, which I have not 100% finished, but I have been smoothing out the curves to make them more circular. Because before they were just kind of aligned to the grid to look kind of smooth. But the whole... I kind of mess up this grenade jump a little bit, I guess. The whole style we're going for with the Yarrow is that they're kind of fastidious about things being exact. So because of that, we need the curves to be a bit smoother. We are already halfway done with the mission. In fact, probably way more than halfway, because the big part of that level is just clearing out that particular room. That's by far the most threatening part. We wander through here. As it turns out, the enforcers that can sometimes get in our way just decided to go off into this side room, which I am not complaining about at all. I have more than enough enforcer pellet packs at this point, so I don't even bother going to collect more. And we're done with the mission, so we can just go back to the start and teleport out. Faster to grenade jump than wait for that platform. One thing I probably haven't commented on is doors. There is a shorthand that I'm trying to go for some levels, that I've already gone for some levels, but I have not finished putting throughout the scenario yet. I'm not sure if this is going to be a 1.3 thing or a 1.4 thing, but the idea is that you should be able to tell whether you can open the door without having to try to open it. So if the door is completely lit up on some of these levels, this is not one of them yet. But if it is completely lit up, then you will be able to tap it. And if it has a flickering light, then there's a switch somewhere that will control it. And if it is completely dark, then it will not open. This, like I said, is not implemented on every level yet, and this level actually explicitly violates that rule. So I am going to fix that for this one at least. Because I think it's just a good design practice. Obviously, the secret doors are the big exception here, but we're not going to have a door that looks like it won't open, and use that as something that will open as a secret, because that just kind of violates the whole principle. It'll just not look like a door. This is one of those levels that had entirely too many switches. I have started to remove some of them. I think it improves the level quite a bit. Those 4 platforms used to be each had their own switch, which also meant that you kind of had to time them in a way that was helpful, and that was not easy to remember. Like, it wasn't easy to remember what order you should activate them in, or what timing you should use. So I just put them on a helpful timer, rather than, forcing the player to remember what the most optimal setup was. This level, as you might have already noticed, I am fighting the Hulks, even though we're meant to be helping them in a slave rebellion. And the issue is because they actually are a threat on this level, and that applies on the next level as well. I don't feel great about it, but it's just, Eternal does sometimes make the player do some not entirely savory things. This level is actually one of the longest in Eternal. Well, not in all of Eternal. It's one of the longest in the any person route. I think only Once More Under the Breach is longer, and that one at least has the excuse of being the only extermination mission in the any person route. So, like, the fact that that takes 12 minutes, whatever, you expect an extermination mission to take a while. This one takes, I think, if I remember right, I think this was a gold split, and I still took 10 minutes and 3 seconds or something to complete it, which is a lot. There probably are a couple of skips that I have not yet considered. Like, if I feel like doing some really, really weird-ass, grenade warps or something, it's entirely possible that there's something that I haven't figured out yet. I don't know how consistent that would be on Total Carnage, especially for a run this late in the game. But I could, you know, it is something I have considered. Once again, we got rid of some switches with these. These are now tag switches, and they open a couple of doors at once. This also used to be a 2x recharger, which I thought was completely pointless since there's a 3x on the other side of the level, so they're now both 3x. This one is still further from the center of the level than the other one is, so you will probably be using the one on the left most of the time, but... or the west, whatever you prefer. Once again, you see how ridiculous the knockback of this staff is with low gravity in particular. After a moment, I just decide, whatever, I'm not going to deal with it. I think I do end up, yeah. I really like how this remix of rushing works for this level. Yeah, it's rushing. It just kind of fits the atmosphere. I wish it were... The one thing is, I do kind of wish it were slightly longer, but... because I do like using long tracks on long levels, but I can't really think of anything I would add to the remix. Yeah, well, all of these songs, apart from a couple, are based on Marathon 1 music, and some of them also include melodies from Halo. The 3 that were done by Nicholas Singer also have Halo melodies in them. Like, the previous track was based on New Pacific and New Pacific Reprise, which I made a medley of because I like how they work together. This segment, I pretty much just YOLO, basically all of the time. Unless I get really low on health. There's a whole bunch of juggernauts there, and it's just really time-consuming to actually fight them. And you can usually just, run past them, and it's pretty much fine most of the time. If you do have trouble, there is a shield recharge not that far from here. I think the reason that this wound up being a gold split is that I did not actually need to recharge this time and was just able to YOLO it completely. And also, I think I got fortunate. Yeah, I got fortunate with this second platform cycle. I don't remember if I was the first time. I probably wasn't. It's very lucky to get lucky on both platform cycles. Very unlucky. Very unlikely. It is lucky to get lucky on both of them. I think that's a tautology. This terminal is not Leela. We have to activate it. It's very obvious that it's not Leela, but it's our only way out of the level because... not Leela is blocking our actual communication with actual Leela. So, it's an obvious trap, but we really have no choice but to spring it. And this point, we get arguably the best weapon in the game. It will one-shot juggernauts, as we will find out immediately. And we're going to do this 2 more times on this part before we really, go forward. The thing is, our ammo for the wave motion cannon is extremely limited until later. There are 4 0-point modules on here when you're playing solo. Make sure you get all of them, you will want them. If you don't, you will basically be... I mean, I don't think I actually used all 4 of them, but it was nice to have them in case I needed them. Starting in Chapter 5, 0-point module ammo will become... or 0-point modules will become quite a bit more widely available. especially in the second half of Chapter 5. But for now, they are... Yeah, I know. This is like one of the segments of Eternal that I am considering redesigning a bit. I do like the way it feels like you're basically going up this giant-ass canyon. I almost got that grenade jump right. It was very disappointing that I screwed it up. Right? It was so close. I was so close to having it right. It was heartbreaking, man. But you know, I did a slightly less stupid setup here and was able to get there. I really should have done it on the other side because I was trying to get close to that Enforcer, who's really the main threat I wanted to take out. Because we want to start the next level with 3x shields if possible. It can be very unpredictable. So I do, like, it's a bit of a time loss to go back here and get 3x, but, like, this part of the game is pretty dangerous. And until I'm more confident in my ability to do these levels consistently, I would rather just have the 3x to start. Because it's less time consuming to get this recharge than it would be to go back for a recharge early in the next level. Which is basically like a 1 minute time loss. And somehow I warped through that wall. I don't know what I did there. It's pretty cool. You do switch to the wave motion cannon because there's a Juggernaut we're going to kill immediately. If we don't, it's just, you know, a potential run killer. So, made sure I actually hit the Juggernaut. Lined up to exactly 135 degrees, or was it negative 135? Whatever. Did another huge grenade jump. This level was not low gravity in old versions, by the way, but we realized it should be because the Incredible Hulk is low gravity. And this is a small moon, so it should not have a particularly high amount of gravity. And that just has the added benefit of making these sweet grenade jumps possible. But it would have been good for the story either way, even if it wasn't. So, so for this level, it's pretty RNG dependent because the spawn points of monsters are well, the spawn points of monsters are constant, but how the monsters do in combat against each other is not. So the optimal strategy I find is to activate as many monsters as possible and is practical. Like, you don't want to just run in and YOLO everything when you're going to take 2x shields worth of damage immediately at the start. So I do go through here. I end up getting bullied by some of these hulks. I don't really want to use my grenade or wave motion cannon ammo immediately, although I do almost always end up using like 1.5 wave motion cannon or 1.5 0-point modules. I wanted to go through that hallway, but they were just not letting it happen, so I wound up having to find another way around. I just decided at this point to give that up, I think. Yeah, I think this is the point where I said, yeah, you know what, this isn't happening. There are a lot of switches on this level, but it doesn't actually take that long to do. I think I usually take about 4 minutes to do this level. And more of that is due to the enemy combat, really. You just have to navigate around and make sure you, deal optimally with all of the possible situations. I think I probably would have PB'd on this particular level if I had not gone back and double-checked to see if I had activated a couple of the switches, which, as it turns out, I had. Or I think it was destroyed a couple of sets of wires, but... Anyway, the important thing, really, is just to activate as many of these monsters as possible, as quickly as possible, because they will... Basically, most of them will take care of each other. You do need to be prepared to switch to the wave motion cannon when you have an optimal shot at destroying a whole bunch of them at once. Like that. That's pretty optimal. That's a good use of a wave motion cannon shot, if I say so myself. And as you can see here, this is there were a whole bunch of troopers and hulks that have, the hulks have basically done most of my work for me at this point. As far as the combat goes. But I still do need to break a whole bunch of wires and stuff. Somehow these two troopers survived. I was kind of surprised about that, but it didn't really cost me that much time. One of the main navigational challenges is this area, which, like, you pretty much always end up getting blocked by one of those hulks unless you just use the wave motion cannon shot. I didn't actually know what was blocking me for a second there. It was pretty puzzling. Not to be the fighter, obviously. I think that may have been the last set of switches that I needed to hit. But I wasn't sure that I had gotten them all, so I went back and checked a couple of them. And then one of these hulks blocked my way, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go see if I can get out of here. And it turns out I could. So we are now at the 4th branch level of Marathon Eternal. This one is kind of different from the others in an odd way. Most of the branch levels in this game present you a really obvious choice, and you can, and which choice you choose makes the difference as to whether you go to the success or failure branches. In this level, it's not like that. You need to explore the level, basically, is what you need to do to get to the success branch. And if you don't do that, then you'll be taken to the failure branch. But you will be shown, in the 2nd level of the failure branch, Run Coward, you will basically be shown where you needed to explore and didn't. Because at the end of the level, you'll be taken to where the Yarrow cybernetic junction that you need to destroy is. You won't actually be able to get to the cybernetic junction in Run Coward, but that room is the room that you need to just you need to go to, and then you need to hit all 4 of those wires, and once you've done that, you will be taken to the success branch. But we're not going to bother going through any of that because this is the any % route. It's just, and that was new for 1.2. The new exit for Run Coward. The previous version just kind of teleported you out. Like there was just this structure that you would have to leave from, and instead we've Leocrow added this new staircase, and then below the staircase I added a segment of Dreadnought. And that segment, it's this segment right here. And there's a switch that basically takes you to where the cybernetic junction is in that version of the level. But you won't actually be allowed to enter the cybernetic junction. Or wait, no, the switch... I don't remember what we did, actually. It's been a couple minutes. It's been a couple months since I last played the level, at least. I think you might actually enter that segment, the central segment, from the other side of it. In which case the switch does the exact same thing. The switch opens where the cybernetic junction should be, but instead you just get teleported out. That's right. Anyway, this is definitely a breather level. You can die in it, and I have had a run die on it before. But as long as you're somewhat careful with your health, it's kind of slower paced. That said, this level and the one before it, Babylon 10 or Babylon X, I'm not really sure which it's supposed to be. Or I think it's probably supposed to be both, actually. Anyway, I feel like these are 2 of the most quintessentially eternal levels, if that makes sense. They were 2 of the levels I remembered best from the first time I played the game. And they kind of feel like they have a lot of aspects of what makes Eternal Eternal. So here we just want to, there's 4 hunters and 2 enforcers in this room. It's better to just deal with them kind of slowly. Gotta destroy these 4 wires, and then we're basically out of here. I think I went and got a recharge for some reason, even though there's a recharge right at the start of the next level too. I probably just wasn't really thinking. This secret, by the way, I just added. I didn't even know that a platform or that column had a hidden door in it. but there was nothing in the hidden door, so I just put a 2x there. Because why not? This is another one of Talishar's new remixes. I really like this one, which I'm not a huge fan of the original version of this track. This is Freedom, I think. Yeah, it's Freedom. Like, it's fine for what it is, but it feels like an unfinished song. And Talishar's version actually feels finished. So, I just really like what he did with it. This level is one of the ones I've begun implementing the whole door thing I was talking about earlier, where you can tell whether a door will open based on the lighting. But also, we're going to expand this mission a bit. Right now it's just extermination, and there's basically nothing going on with the story. We do have some story ideas that are going to expand Chapter 4 a bit. I'm not sure whether we're going to leave it as extermination or not. Because extermination missions are very time-consuming, and like we're going to add some other stuff that will probably still be pretty time-consuming. And is likely to require exploring a lot of the level. But we haven't really finished building the new segments yet, nor have we finished writing everything that's going to go into the new story elements. Overall, though, the new story will basically explain why the Pfhor do not really use artificial intelligence apart from Tico. And the apart from Tico part won't be directly addressed. Possibly. I don't know. We might. We kind of have it written out, and it's related to the new aspects of Chapter 5's story as well, which I don't really want to spoil for people that want to experience it fresh. So I guess I won't talk about it too much, but maybe I'll go explain it after this ends in a segment that people can just skip, I guess, if they want to learn more about it. But suffice it to say, there is a specific reason that the Pfhor do not, like in our chronology, why the Pfhor don't use artificial intelligences, and it's directly related to what the player will be doing in the revised Chapter 4. But Tico becomes an exception, and there's a reason for that as well. One other comment is that I have redesigned, with the help of Hypersleep, who did a lot of Apotheosis. Hypersleep had some ideas for redesigning the combat in this level, and I have incorporated most of them by this point. Because this level, it's fun, it's always been fun, but it felt like it was missing something in earlier versions. I think we've added some stuff to it that kind of makes the combat a bit more dynamic, and like it feels less like you need to cheese as many parts of it. There are still certain parts that I end up cheesing in the speedrun because it's, at this point, 2 hours into the run, and I really don't want to lose it, because my best time at this point was, I think, 3:01 or something, and I was on pace for about a 2:30, which is about what I wound up with. And if I had lost this run, I would have been heartbroken. I probably will start playing more aggressively in future runs, just because now that I have a nearly 2:30, I can afford to YOLO a bit more. But we'll see. One other aspect of this level is that I've kind of smoothed out some of the curves. Now, the super smooth curves are something that are generally associated with YARO levels, which has some implications. It basically implies that this is kind of an old YARO ship that the Pfhor basically just added some new paints over, or put some new materials over. Which, I mean, let's be honest, like there are some interesting parallels between the Infinity Pfhor set and the Infinity YARO set, which definitely make it look like the Pfhor just put a fresh coat of paint over some YARO stuff. I do not actually know why I bothered to grenade jump to get those pellet packs. Next time I don't need to, because basically after the next level I won't be using the scatter rifle much, if at all. It's not that it is a bad weapon, it's just that Chapter 5 gives you better weapons. Specifically, you get basically close to unlimited ammo for the wave motion cannon, at least if you're doing a speedrun. And you get the gravitronic blades, which will also one-shot almost everything in the game, and which fire much more quickly than the scatter rifle. They just have the disadvantage of being a close-range only weapon. But their effectiveness at close range basically more than makes up for that. So it's very rare to use anything other than the wave motion cannon or gravitronic blades in Chapter 5. At least in a speedrun. But this is like the one room that I still kind of cheese. There are some strats that sometimes work, but they're dangerous. And I'm not super proud of cheesing it like this, but, you know, it works, it gets me through the run. I will definitely, at some point, probably feel confident enough to do a non-cheese strat for that room. And this Hulk got aggro on me, I think. They are berserkers, so they will start to aggro on you if they get too close to death. This is, as I mentioned, the longest level in the 80% route run. It's an extermination mission, so you really can't, right? I mean, it's kind of weird that they're berserker because they're allied with you. Like, I think it's a curious story choice. I probably wouldn't have done it if it were my game, but since it's already there in the physics, I feel hesitant to change it. Let me, hang on a sec, I gotta go switch over to chat. Makes me think of the unit class myth. Yeah, I can see that. Oh wow, I did not see how stretched out that chat was. Okay, that's definitely something I will have to fix in the future setup. That does look pretty bad. Sorry about that. I had not seen that before. And then I just saw the stream window. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that was not intentional. That was me just not really understanding how OBS works yet. I will definitely fix that for a future stream. I'm a little embarrassed about that, actually. I should have tested it by just posting a message or something. That didn't even occur to me, honestly. I'll fix it later. Since the stream is already underway, it's not worth letting you wait. Does it? Seriously? Maybe I'll leave it. I think I originally had the overlay at 420 by 420 pixels, and then I just resized it to whatever is on the side of the screen. I don't know. Yeah, it does kind of add character, I suppose. Maybe I'll leave it. Like, what I wanted to do is I wanted to resize it and then have the splits go above it, but I haven't yet figured out the overlay with, or the integration with the split program or whatever. So for now, it'll just have to. For now, it's just gonna be the chat, and maybe I'll just leave it at that ridiculous width / height. So I do take this a bit more carefully than I needed to. And I probably could have completed in about 11 or 10 minutes, but I think I wound up taking about 12. And I'm sure next time I will go more aggressively. At this point, I was kind of tired, and I had been... Yeah, I kind of figured it was something like that. I feel hesitant to change it during the middle of the stream because it would be inconsistent, and I feel like it would be more distracting to me to have the aspect ratio change mid video than it would be to leave it. So I think, yeah, I'm not going to worry about it until I finish the stream. I'll fix it in between before my next stream. I was talking about something that just completely distracted me. Something about I was gonna take this less safe I wasn't gonna like play it as safely next time. The other thing that wound up costing a bit of time is that I wasn't sure how many Pfhor I needed to kill, because extermination is kind of finicky like that. So because of that, I wound up having to check 3 times to see if I was done with the mission. Obviously, I wasn't done yet. It probably would have just been faster to go explore a bit more after this one, but play to learn. And then I also played a little bit suboptimally there. I probably should have strafed the M1 Enforcer the clockwise and the M2 Enforcer counterclockwise, but I didn't do that. Wasn't really thinking at this point. It was... I should note that I had taken the Security Plus exam before I did most of this run. And for those of you that haven't taken it, it is kind of draining. Like, I passed. But it's... There's a lot of stuff on there, and it is kind of difficult. Like, you feel like... It makes you feel like you don't know anything, even if you do pass. Because there is so much stuff there that is just esoteric. Which, I mean, let's be honest, most of us know nothing about security. I think, like, even a lot of people that work in security don't really know a lot about security. But anyway, I was, like, half brain dead by this point because, it took a lot out of me. I am glad I passed, and I am definitely going to have to learn more about some of the things that I did not remember for the exam. Anyway, this time I actually was done. We're going to Genie in a Bottle, which is the last level of Chapter 4. It's a very short level, at least if you speedrun it. There's a lot of it that we don't actually have to visit. I mean, yeah, that's what a... you could definitely make a case for social engineering that. It's really neat that the Enforcer's weapons work so well against them. I feel like there's a nice symmetry to that. I do like using the Pfhor's own weapons, like each Pfhor's type of weapon against that Pfhor. I take that wrong turn like 2 times out of 3, even though I've probably played this level like 50 times by now. Do want to deal with these Enforcers before we go up here, at least the M1 ones. The M2 ones we can basically leave alone, because they won't be able to hit us. I dealt with that Hunter as well. There are some... We can ignore some of these drones, but the ones on this side of the goo are worth dealing with. Also worth dealing with that Enforcer. I think I wound up trying to recharge and then deciding... Thanks, yeah, Forrest and Tacticus did an absolutely spectacular job with the graphics, and Radix. And I guess Corey King Tucker did some of the Enforcer edits as well, although they were primarily Radix. And I actually worked a little bit on some of the sprites as well. Like Radix did the original sprites, and then the 2 of us did some additions / changes that helped them work better with the game palettes. But yeah, and the architecture is very, very, very good too. Most of which I am not responsible for, but I have designed some segments. It really, like, it is one of the best looking scenarios. I think, like, Tempest area where monsters are in dreams, which is not done yet, but I think those 2 probably, and I guess Rubicon are probably also among the best looking. And then there's a couple other lesser known ones. Lh'owon Fingers, which I'm sure I completely mangled because I don't speak a word of Dutch. That was quite a good looking scenario. I think it gets forgotten because it has nothing to do with the Marathon universe. But yeah, the graphics in this are just gorgeous. I think it's one of the reasons I like playing it so much. So we can grenade jump this, and that like saves us like half the level. It's just the entire part of the level we don't have to deal with at all, and we're done with chapter 4, basically. You know, just the dream level that I once again failed to get a hole in one, and we're done. I think that was a gold split on that level too. If not, it was very, very close, but I think it was a gold split by like a second or something. And so we're on to chapter 5, which is the second shortest chapter in the game, I think. This one takes place 65 million years in the past, at least it's at first. So we're not going to see the Pfhor yet. And you'll notice all the titles have alternate Latin titles if they're not just outright in Latin. That has been the case for the dream levels already. It will now be the case for every level remaining in the game. And there is a reason for that. I don't really want to go too much into it, but it is story related. You will also notice that the AI in this segment, your mission control, uses occasional words of Latin. Again, there's a story reason for this. In fact, the AI's name itself is Latin. It is Custos, which means guardian in Latin. Or custodian, I guess, for that matter. But the famous Juvenal quote, who will guard the guards themselves, uses a form of the word custos. Quis custodia ipsos custodes, I think it is. I probably mangled that. I understand Latin to a certain extent, but I do not speak it fully. I understand enough of it to cause myself trouble. I probably could have done this about a minute faster. I wanted to go pick up a few 0-point modules, just because it's good to have them. But I probably got more than I needed. And I also have not really mapped out this level for a run properly yet. Like, I need to find a route. It takes about a minute, because that's about how long that platform takes to descend, I think. And that will get me some, as many 0-point modules as I can get. Anyway, as you will notice, all of these enemies are from Pathways into Darkness. There are no Pfhor at this point of the game. You will see them again, but not yet. And there is also a story reason that they are Pathways into Darkness enemies, which is specifically that we are fighting dreams of a working Catacombs. So of course they're the same enemies you saw on Pathways. I did that's like 10 seconds or something out of the way, but it is worth the detour. As you'll see, I use up about half of that in this level alone. Because we're basically, at this point, I don't think I ever switch off the wave motion cannon except for one grenade jump, and we met once in the garden. I think that is literally the only time I use anything other than either the wave motion cannon or the gravitronic blades for the rest of the game. And as you can see, we can wave motion cannon jump too. So, but that particular jump I have gotten consistent with the grenade launcher / assault rifle and have not gotten consistent with the wave motion cannon, so I just prefer to use the AR. We have to read that terminal. It activates the rest of the level. There probably is a way to warp through the door, but it would be very inconsistent. And we don't actually have that much wave motion cannon ammo at this point, so probably not worth trying. This part is a little bit annoying sometimes because you just get followed by these dudes and, you know, you kind of have to deal with them one at a time. I probably would have been better off switching to something that would have backed me up or moved me further, not as far back. But at the same time, that would be slow. It would slow down the combat. So I don't really know which would be optimal. Anyway, our mission in this level is to pick up this chip that we're about to get to. I was hoping to get all 3 of these dudes with 1 wave motion cannon shot. As it turns out, I only got 1 with the first. I have turned down that narrow corridor that you can't actually exit from far too many times to count. Far more often than I would like to admit. I definitely screw that jump up, and I don't know why. It's very finicky. You can also wave motion cannon jump backwards, which can save a bit of time in long corridors like that anyway. We're going to do quite a bit more wave motion cannon jumping in this level. This is the only level that has a Latin title that does not also have an English title. The translation of it is, "This cave is not a natural formation," which of course you will recognize from Halo, probably. We decided it was worth immortalizing one of Cortana's most infamously stupid lines in a language that is commonly used to sound smart. To be fair, the line wasn't really stupid when they read it. They had changed the design of that area, to the point where it wasn't obvious that it was an artificial construction. But then they redesigned the area, and of course, the rest was history. This whole segment of the game was originally meant to tie in with Halo Combat Evolved's story, but apparently Bungie changed it. I don't have the full details behind this, so I can only speculate to some extent. I know what Forrest has said about it, basically, which was that it was originally meant, there is a whole major plot twist that has kind of been, people have mixed feelings about it. It involves the Yarrow and the Working Cactuar. And evidently this was part of Jason Jones' original story draft for Halo, when it was apparently meant to tie in much more to Marathon than it actually does. Again, I'm just going off of third-hand information here because Forrest himself was going off of what a Bungie employee told him, apparently. But that was apparently part of the original Halo story draft, but got dropped from it because evidently, and again, this is third-hand information, Bungie did not want there to be too many explicit connections between Marathon and Halo because they did not want Microsoft to end up with control over Marathon as well. This might actually be my favorite music track in the game. This is a mix of Covenant Dance and Leela, which was done by Nicholas Singer. It's the third of his 3 pieces in the game, and it only appears in this one level. And the one thing about Eternal 1.3 is that we are hoping eventually to have it so that every level that has combat has its own unique music track, but this has always only appeared in this one level. This is the 5th branch level of Eternal. It used to be one of the most widely disliked levels in the game, and I think there was good reason for that. The combat in Chapter 5 used to be absolutely atrocious. The thing is that the player basically has these absolutely god-tier weapons at this point. So the thinking was, in earlier versions of the game, that there needed to be an absolute metric ton of enemies on every level to compensate for that. The problem was that they respawned at a ridiculous rate. So if you killed one, another monster would immediately respawn. And that just was not fun. The monsters still respawn post 1.1, since they still respawn in 1.2 and 1.3, but we have slowed down the rate at which they respawn massively. And because of that, Chapter 5 is now one of the best liked parts of the game instead of one of the most hated parts of the game. So I feel quite pleased with that. I'm very happy that people like it a lot more. The other thing about this level, and we're already almost done with it, this is the only level that we made a major change to that was related to speed, other than the dream levels. And I'll go into that in a little bit. There was a skip in 1.1 and earlier that would allow the player to go from any one of the 4 dream versions of Where Giants Have Fallen to the final level of the game. That was removed from 1.2. I was not super thrilled with that, but I understand why it was done. It wasn't my decision, but, you know. The other big change was made to Deep into the Grotto. In pre-1.2 versions, it was possible to leave the level without actually completing the mission. You really only needed to destroy 2 of these, I think it's 7 sets of computer banks that you need to turn off, which meant that a casual player could basically leave the level without completing the mission. And that just didn't feel right, because, you know, it doesn't really make sense in the story. But at the same time, if making the player actually deactivate all 7 of those computer banks manually would have added like 5 or 10 minutes to a speedrun, probably, and that also felt like it was really, really rude. So what we wound up doing was we added a new secret that enabled the player to deactivate 6 of the 7 computer banks, basically right at the same time as you saw. And that felt like an acceptable compromise. You have to grenade jump up there, or wave motion cannon jump up there to get there, and it's not something that a casual player will probably easily discover, but at the same time, it prevents the game from gratuitously having 5 minutes added to it. So I'm taking this level a little cautiously. There is a way to grenade jump or wave motion cannon jump up to the top of it, but it is very, very dangerous. And I don't know if it would actually be that much faster than doing the bridge raising optimally, because the problem is that you have to go up that bridge twice. And because of that, you would have to do the same setup with the wave motion cannon twice, and it's not actually that fast. Like, the time that you would gain going up there the first time would basically be negated because you're not able to go up as smoothly each time, and so you're kind of losing all of that time, I think. Like, I have actually tried running it using the wave motion cannon jumps, and I've tried running it using the, just raising all the platforms normally. And I think it wound up balancing out about more or less even on total Carnage. I think on Kindergarten, the wave motion cannon setup would be a lot faster. This level has a major new addition in 1.3 that is, like, a lot of the Chapter 5 story that we've added is kind of, well, in conjunction with a terminal from Flight of Icarus from Hathor that I mentioned earlier, that reveals a lot of what's different about this version of the game in terms of this particular chapter. Well, that and the Latin, I guess, that's the other big difference. But one of the major story additions is very heavily. I don't know why I stopped recharging there. Probably an accident. Anyway, the 1.3's big addition to Chapter 5, I think it helps the game have a more satisfying ending because it gives one of the characters a more consequential exit. And it also is an HP Lovecraft pastiche that Forrest and I wrote that I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. It's kind of interesting because it inverts the usual perspective of Lovecraft's cosmic horror, where humanity is absolutely terrified of the alien. In this case, the aliens are absolutely terrified of humanity. And I think that's a very interesting perspective flip. There's a lot of potential for dramatic irony, and I'm quite pleased with how it worked out. It is a very lengthy terminal, although it is not as lengthy as it appears to be because we have this setup on each page where 6 of the lines are basically taken up by this header that's at the top of every Pfhor terminal. So it's really only the equivalent of like 7 or 8 terminal pages, I think. But it takes up, I think, like 11 or something. Anyway, because this is a speedrun, we're not going to see that terminal, but I do have, like, if you go find my YouTube channel, you can go see. There are plenty of videos that have it in its entirety. And as you can see, we're basically mostly using the wave motion cannon and gravitronic blades, with very few exceptions. Because there's, like, anytime I've switched to another weapon, it just wound up wasting time. This level is where Eternal goes from being pretty difficult to being very difficult. And I have, like, this level and the next one have probably killed... Well, they've killed a lot of my runs that got this far. And because of that, I took it a lot more cautiously than I would have normally taken it, I think. Because at this point, I was just really, really desperate to get a run that actually got through the game without dying. And at this point, I also forgot whether I had hit that switch, because, again, I was brain dead by this point. So I went back, and that was about a 10-second time loss. I do not really focus on it, but that area out there is something that I designed for 1.2, and it reminds me of Super Mario 64, and I'm very happy with how it looks. Specifically, it reminds me of the level with the rainbow carpet ride. It just reminds me of that for some reason. The new terminal that has the 4 perspective slip of Lovecraft is in this room, by the way. I need to change the physics of this a little bit, I think, or add some Lua or something, because to change how the Juggernaut gets destroyed at the end of that level, that triggers that flash. I don't know. I'll have to figure something out. So this level I take very cautiously. As it turns out, more cautiously than I needed to, because a major aspect of this level is not working correctly at this point, and I need to fix it. Which I will explain when we get to it. So I've had three of my last 4 runs that got this far. Well, no, all 3 of my previous 4 runs all 3 of my previous 3 runs that had gotten to this level had died on it. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm not gonna risk anything. And I was hoping that I was gonna be on pace for 230. As it turns out, I just missed it. But because of that, I just kind of went a little bit slowly. This nightmare, unfortunately, was a little bit resistant to my wave motion cannon shots. Again, firing with the attempting to aim with the keyboard, as Aperture said. There are some disadvantages to playing with the keyboard, but I could probably do this jump across this canyon with a wave motion cannon. But what I'm doing here, it's a kind of a strange setup, but that polygon that I just walked over activates all the monsters in that area, and then I leave. And I didn't really need to go get this recharge, but the reason for leaving that area was to basically cause all of the monsters to get distracted by something else, so that they would not lock onto me in case I fell down into that canyon by messing up the jump, which has happened. I have messed up that jump. I had the crosshairs on. This is a a replay, so I was playing with crosshairs, but I turned them off for the replay. Because I think it looks better with the crosshairs off, but it definitely is useful when I'm playing live. I was hoping that that shot would hit one of the juggernauts, but it did not. So I'm just making sure these dudes are not gonna bother me. I jump across. And I thought here I was going to trigger a boss fight, which is well, it's sort of fight is kind of an exaggeration for what it is. It's more like, I don't know. This was going to be this is going to be the final boss of the ish of this game is going to be here. But I'm using Marathon 1 activation polygons, and for some reason they're not working here. I think I might end up handling this a completely different way, actually, because I think there's a better way to handle this so that she will be active at this point, but not actually fighting the player until the player reaches a certain part of the level. Because I feel like if she activates before the player really has a good view of this area, then it will just be outright sadistic. But at the same time, she should not just be completely inactive until you get there. I don't know. I have not anywhere near finished scripting this part of the game, so it will definitely behave differently than it does now. And these fighters are just bullying me a lot more than they normally do. I don't know what was different this time, but it's just a demonstration of how lethal fighters can be in Eternal. Anyway, that will be the final boss of the game, more or less. It will not really be much of a fight, in that the player will not be able to damage her at all, and she will not directly damage the player as long as you are wielding either the gravitronic blades or the wave motion cannon. The idea is that Yarrow weapons convey invulnerability to other Yarrow weapons, and she's wielding the wave motion cannon. So as long as you have either the gravitronic blades up or the wave motion cannon up, you're fine. More or less. Because she can still knock you into other enemy shots, she can knock you around the level. It can be a bad time. It has killed runs for me before. This is we've dreamt about this level 4 times, now we're actually climbing it for real. This level's kind of easy, though. And if you thought that area in The Incredible Hulk had no negative space, wait till you see the map of this level. But this is a level that we are definitely going to redesign. We're hoping to do it for 1.3. And that's why I don't really feel that important to learn. Yeah, it does a little bit. Although you're seeing how it performs right now. And I screwed that grenade jump up. So I thought it was going to save me some time, and it wound up costing me a bit. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, because I could just get right back up. But it was a failed experiment. And after that point, I just decided I'd do it normally. And this is not the intended path either, I don't think, but it is a good shortcut. I mean, this part is the intended path, but that jump I just took was not intended, I don't think. Anyhow, we're basically done with the game at this point. I was hoping to get a sub 230. I wound up getting 231.10 or something. And if I had not messed that grenade jump up, I would at least have gotten a 230, but the ending was a little messed up. Like, I messed up a little bit at the ending, but I'm happy with how this turned out. It could have been... It took me, like... Oh god, I think I probably spent more than 100 attempts trying to get this run. Deathless. Of course, I abandoned a lot of those myself early on if I was not happy with how the game was going, but... This is the prologue of the game backwards, although there are some updates to the architecture I've made that have not made their way into this version yet. The prologue is the far side of nowhere, this is the near side of everywhere. One thing I didn't note, all of the Latin titles are basically the English titles more or less translated, but there are a few differences. This one, technically, the Latin version means the near side of all places, and then the opening means the far side of no place. And we changed that slightly because nowhere and everywhere are just adverbs in Latin, and we would have to use rather awkward grammatical construction. So I changed those to a slightly less literal rendering of the titles. Thank you. Yeah, I was pleased with how it turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. The other really big thing that's probably worth noting is that the translation of "We Met Once in the Garden," which is "Coibamus olimen horto" or something like that, can also translate as "We came up against," which could mean we came up against each other in the garden, or it could mean we copulated once in the garden. Latin is a very weird language. Thank you. Thank you both. Thanks for watching. I'm thinking of whether I will do anything else tonight. My voice is starting to go. I feel like I had a little bit of a cold earlier, or but that seems to be kind of faded. But I also haven't gotten any water lately, and my voice is starting to get a little tired. I might just cut it in a moment. I haven't decided. I do kind of want to go over that aspect I was mentioning, the spoiler aspects of the story. I saved those for now because I wanted to be sure that, like, if someone didn't want to know the spoilers, that they could just stop watching after the gameplay was finished, and that I wouldn't have to just, say come back in 2 minutes after muting the stream or something. But I don't know. But I think it is worth just. I'll go through a little bit of story talk in a moment. So yeah, the basic. I'm just gonna do the preferences so that it doesn't keep replaying the theme song, even though the theme song absolutely slaps. But the basic idea, the spoilers are gonna start here. For those of you that have not paid attention to the Infinity terminals in a while, there's an Infinity terminal that refers. It is from Pfhor, Admiral Pfhor, which mentions a Pfhor known as the Great Mother crouched behind the throne. The exact phrase is "Great Mother crouched behind the throne, I make this wrong right," or something, which implies that she is a figure of some sort of religious devotion. And then I think that is in. I can't remember. It's in either the misspelled IMAXIC or the AIE, or it's in Carroll Street Station, or it's in Your Worm Food Dude. I can't remember which of the three is which, honestly. Which terminal appears in which of those. There's another message which may be from Pfhor and it may be from Tycho that refers to an individual known as the hindmost Crash, which can't actually be that person's name or his name, because a Crash is not a person. A Crash is a nursery, or it is an orphanage. So it's probably a sort of metonymy, something that is used, like we use the White House to refer to the presidential administration, but it's obviously not referring to the literal house. The White House is just the location where the presidency is seated. And so the hindmost Crash is referred to as her. And to those privileged to serve her, she appears insane, or something along those lines. These are curious because there are very few cases in Marathon Infinity that refer to any Pfhor using a gender at all. In fact, there's only one other case, I think, in all of Infinity, and that uses a pronoun to refer to a Pfhor, and that pronoun may not even have been written by a Pfhor. That terminal is in fact, it almost certainly was not. That terminal is probably from Tycho, and it is a forgery meant to discredit the Captain Archisne, or however it's pronounced. And it refers to him as male. And it is the only time one of these Pfhor bureaucratic terminals uses a pronoun, ever. Like, all of the other Pfhor bureaucratic terminals do not use any pronouns whatsoever, which I think that is intended as one of the clues that it is a forgery. But anyhow, this is a little bit of a tangent. But in Eternal, the hypothesis is that, number one, the Great Mother crouched behind the throne is also known as the Hindmost Crash. And number two, these two people are our main antagonist, Pfhor, who has traveled back in time in an attempt to get revenge against humanity, as she has already been doing for the entire game. And so she's traveled back with the Pfhor that she leaves at the end of Where Giants Have Fallen. She leaves in that ship with those Pfhor, and she turns the what is it the her cybernetic junction into a sort of cloning facility. So at this point, she's basically locked in. She has committed for the long haul. She's going to be there 10, 15,000 years, attempting her revenge against humanity. So all of this goes, more or less as she plans it for a rather long time. But as we know from the beginning of Marathon of Eternal, Pfhor is one of the 10 Mjolnir Mark IV cyborgs that stowed away on the Marathon at Tau Ceti. And the thing is that Tico is one of the science officers of the Marathon, which means that he would have access to the pattern buffer data from the Marathon and would be able to analyze their contents. So when Tico shows up in the Pfhor Empire, in any particular timeline, and he happens to come across a person who has the exact same genetic characteristics or the exact same mental characteristics as Pfhor, it's going to raise his eyebrow. Now, Tico being Tico, he's not going to just reveal this out of hand. He's going to think to himself, how can I turn this to my advantage? The thing is that the Pfhor Empire thus far has had a habit of basically destroying any significantly advanced computer that comes into their possession up to this point. Because in the Chapter 4 events that we were talking about earlier, where the player assists an AI in basically going rogue and assisting the Drenail with the slave rebellion, well, the Pfhor don't take kindly to this, and they just decide to shut down all of their sophisticated computer systems. But Tico tends to have some information that jeopardizes Pfhor's position as basically Empress of the Pfhor. And so his particular proposal to her is, look, you leave me in place, and no one has to hear about any of this. But if something happens to me, if something happens to all of the Ticos that are in the Pfhor Empire, then there's going to be some stuff that comes out here. So it's essentially a sort of blackmail, but it is basically what enables Tico to maintain his particular position within the Pfhor Empire. And so this applies even to basically to any version of Tico who would have memories from the Marathon, which basically means all of them. Now that said, I think there are probably some clones that do not end up revealing that information in some cases, because I think that we haven't written out all of the implications of this yet, but I think the implication is going to be that the deal is that if all of the Ticos disappear, then this will be revealed. But if one of them somehow gets taken out, then maybe, and it is not by the Pfhor themselves, then maybe that would be allowed to slide. Anyway, I mean, there are definitely implications of this that we're still working through, but that's basically the general gist I think that we're going to go with. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I probably will stream again sometime soon. May stream Attempts of Eternal. I may stream some W-Made stuff at some point, because I think people probably would want to see that too. And we're definitely we're making progress on both of these games. I'm hoping that we will be able to release both of them this year, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I've said things like that before, and they certainly did not happen. So anyway, hope everyone knows it. Yeah, I know, right? Like, and where monsters are in dreams, there is a. If you look back to, I want to say that you can go back as far as 2003, and you can find a post from Blaine Scott that says it was basically done, and they just needed to do some testing and some like a few bug fixes or something, and it should be out within a couple of months. This was in 2003. So people have heard this before a lot of times. So, oh, and one other thing I should note: the games themselves imply that the AI's name is pronounced Tycho, and I think that might be how a couple of Bungie employees pronounced it. But it's based off of Tycho Brahe, who I think pronounced his name with the E sound rather than the I sound. I don't know. I think, and Tycho may also have just been a joke at Tycho's expense from Durandal, who rhymes with psycho, but I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, have a good night, everyone. I'm sure I'll stream again soon. Thanks for watching.